Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly. We're back with another East Tennessee fishing report with Ellis Ward. How you doing, Ellis?
I am doing well, Marv. How are you?
As always, I'm just trying to stay out of trouble. And, it's kind of funny, right? It's, 2 weeks ago we talk, it's cold, you're having a shad kill, and now it's almost 80 degrees every day and you got dry flies going on. What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a reversal in terms of timing, but the trend of small baetis and even some little caddis kind of taking over the rivers, and like I'd said, the yellow bugs, the sulfurs, and BMDs being gone for a while now, but that trend's continuing, and with the warmer temperatures and a good degree of variation in flows, which I should say includes a lot of low water. What I've been focusing on and the trips I've been running have been focused almost exclusively on dry flies. And we'll get into some of the streamer stuff with the rises and falls, but the big water streamer windows are a couple hours at a time, and you're either chasing or getting chased by rises and falls. So to be able to camp out and really watch the bug activity progress and watch the feeding progress in some of these sections where you would just see pods that on good days would let you'd be able to whack a few out of the same pod and, go to the next hot spot and do the same, and maybe switch some bugs. But it's been, we're watching whole sections, and I'm rowing past risers to go to more simply because we're running out of daylight, and we're really, there have been a couple in the last few weeks where dropping down into the last chute going towards the boat ramp, we're still hooking up on the way out. So it's been fun. There are a lot of boats on these rivers, that's no secret, and there's also a lot of fish, and there are also a lot of bugs. So it's been pretty cool to see just the display of how many fish are in here and how active they get. They're not seeing 60, 70 boats in a day. The roster is probably 20% of what it is during middle of the summer. So, still have to exercise some caution, and they can be picky with the types of bugs, but you get a good presentation and even stay, fishing 18s, 20s, you can stay within 5X, and, you don't have to drop down to 5.5 or 6 and worry about snapping them off when they're really going. But for wade fishermen, and if you do have a boat, when you start seeing stuff happening, bug activity, and this is mostly late afternoons, evenings, if you have another, and I wouldn't normally say this, but if you're halfway through your float and you're starting to see some stuff and you might be worried about daylight, keep moving. It's pretty likely that you're going to encounter more of the same, and it's going to continue to get more fun, and said another way, easier, as the evening wears on.
Yeah, got it. Because you're fishing into the hatch, right? So, you're going to have, I guess as opposed to going to emergers to dries on top, you're going to have kind of the full thing going by the time you're ready to take out, right?
Yeah, and you're really watching. There's going to be subtle rises, and some of those sippers those are my favorite because it's so clear that their blinders are on and they're ready to go for it. So there are plenty of emerger patterns that are highly visible, and certainly I'll even fish some of the CDC stop hole fishes, the emerger just with the body sort of sunk in the water, and that'll double. That's a dry. It has enough of a profile to be a dry fly. So um, yeah, you're fishing the full cycle of bugs, and it's kind of happening over the course of afternoon, evening. Um, but obviously you can pick them off throughout the day.
Yeah.
Sporadic rising, but that's daytime stuff has been fishing those rises and falls with streamers and kind of settling into the the spots that are good for those handful of days for those evening hours.
Yeah. And so, for fishing to a pod, do you generally, or do you try to pick a fish, kind of the best fish out of the pod, kind of regardless of where it is? Or do you try to kind of fish the pod almost like you'd fish a pool, right, from the outside in and from the back to the front?
Yeah, really good question. And I wish there were some recordings of me on the boat. I always like to find a fish, and ideally, the angler is going to cast to a fish, even if there's 10, 15. I prefer to get the outside in approach going. Um, in in some instances that we've seen recently, just with how quickly things progress, and also these fish moving around and tail outs, it's less of the stagnant, they aren't going to move unless that bug is right above their face in a lane. And it's more of, truly pods moving around to where those bugs are in the highest concentration. And so, yeah, I'll remind people to find a fish and cast to it. I think that helps with concentration and with the, anticipating the eat, pause, set. If you're just sort of casting blindly, you can get surprised and pop that hook out pretty quickly if you don't realize that there's a fish right under where you're casting. But yeah, you're spot on though. Going outside in, for some of the more advanced guys, if we're sitting there for a little bit and it's not a big deal to not boat a fish, um, you can sit there and watch for a little bit and start to see where the big ones are. You're typically going to blow a good number of fish that you could catch when targeting, the one or two bigger ones in there. But it is certainly possible, and already enough patience and you know being a student of the water while you're out there to make the dry fly game work. If you want to get the biggest of the fish in there feeding, you do have to take a breath and ignore a lot of other fish.
Yeah, got it. And got another question for you. This one's from Will, and it's a streamer question, and he wanted to get your thoughts on how you adjust your approach and tackle when you're streamer fishing on the South Holston, kind of based on the generation schedule.
Sure. So fishing the rise or the fall, I'm going to start with and I'm actually looking at the clock right now because we could be here until we talk next. So fishing as a baseline, I'm going 7s and 8 weights and sinking line. I tend to like the faster sinking, the scientific anglers and triple density, the Rio outbound short, 357, 7 inch, 7 inch per second. So very aggressively sinking lines and fishing neutrally buoyant or buoyant flies. That it's a great question and something that I'm doing a lot more recently, especially because we're getting these windows of 3 hour pushes and chasing daylight on both ends, starting at dawn and really only getting 2 hours of that push and, rowing with that, but really only getting 4 hours. So I'll switch to not full intermediate. I have in the past, but the full sink line, it does a number of different things. One of the biggest ones is that when you deliver a fly, when you deliver a streamer and it gets eaten, if you're moving it, you're keeping tension on the line, giving it action, anticipating the eat, that thing is in a straight line. And so you're naturally set up to give a decent hook set. When you have to deal with a bow in the line, which happens with intermediate and with floating line, and it's not mending, it's not anything like that. It's just that's a neutrally buoyant or buoyant thing that's in water. So it's just the moving current imparts a force on that's greater than the sink tip or the end of that line. So those triple densities and the full sinks, it keeps stuff in a line. So Scientific Anglers makes an intermediate sink 2, sink 3 that I have really enjoyed both fishing myself and having anglers fish. Another thing I do is extend leaders. So you can specifically with, going from some of the hair bugs, the drunken disorderlies, a swim bug, the buoyant flies where you're sinking it with the line, going to the circus peanut platform. I call them the jig or the strip flies, but being able to extend your leader and accentuate or exaggerate and really utilize that kill, because those things go up and down, and I tie them pretty sparsely. You can start to see them. Some of the stuff we read about, the rules of thumb, like people talk about them and fish that way for a reason. So being able to fish a little slower and keep it in the kill zone with some of those jig flies on a less sinky line with a longer leader, you can it gives you a little more room to play with what the bitiness is telling you, if it's on the fall, if it's slower movements, if it's just really extended kills, which can be painful to just strip again. That pause feels like a lifetime. And it just becomes easier and less of a risk to your sink line getting washed downstream, wrapped around boulders, whatever, if you're dropping down to the triple densities. And SA also has a Trout Express with a floating running line. So a lot of different options out there as you're going from big water to less big water.
Got it. And, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us. You can DM us on social media, whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag. And then you're going to do a drawing for a really cool setup from Ellis at the end of the season. We're going to draw for 2 days of fishing with him and a night at the Watauga River Lodge. Right, Ellis?
That is right. Night down at sort of in the middle of the Watauga Middle River from from Brownie at the Watauga River Lodge, which I appreciate greatly.
Yeah, very, very neat. And, before I let you go, Ellis, you want to let folks know where they can find you so they can book you and fish with you this winter?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at Ellis Ward Flies. And a lot of that is the flies I've been tying and some personal fishing. And that is a good place to send me a message, contact me. Otherwise, always feel free to call or text at 513-543-0019.
Well, folks, I always say fall is my favorite time of the year to be on the water, and you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ellis.
Appreciate it, Marv.